Welcome to this online service at City of Hope.
And the word from the Lord I have this morning comes out of Matthew 8 from verse 14. It says, and when Jesus entered Peter's house, can you say Jesus entered Peter's house? He saw his mother-in-law lying sick with fever. Now you know me, I normally joke about the mother-in-laws. But today I'm going to preach about the mother-in-law. Is that all right? This is going to be the mother-in-law of all sermons. Is that all right? When Jesus entered Peter's house, he saw his mother-in-law lying sick with a fever, and he touched her hand, and the fever left her. Some Bibles say immediately the fever left her. And she rose. Can you say she rose? And began to serve him. You see, Jesus wants to enter your house today. Jesus wants to enter every home today. He wants to enter our hearts, but more than that, he wants to enter our homes today. Now, I don't know about you, but being a pastor, I find that most people don't want people to visit their house. Most people are slightly embarrassed about something in their house. Oftentimes when I call up somebody and say, listen, can I come and visit you at your house? No pastor will rather come to church and see you at church. Or can we rather meet at a coffee store? Come on, how many of you know what I'm talking about? Because there's always that one room in the house that's a little bit untidy, or maybe the kids will embarrass us, or maybe there is a mother-in-law that might embarrass us and talk out. Or I remember in the olden days when the dominee still used to do huisbesoek. You know, when he was on his way, the dad would say to the kids, bring the big family Bible to the living room and dust it off and put it there and open it up. But Jesus wants to enter our house. Yet most of us don't want him to enter our house. Most of us feel embarrassed about something in our house that is maybe broken. Maybe something in our family that is a little bit dysfunctional. How many of you know that there's some dysfunction in every family? I'm getting a better response from this side of the congregation. Can I just preach to this side? How many of you know that there is something dysfunctional about every family? Is it true? We are simply broken people who were raised by broken parents, who were once broken children. And so there is a measure of dysfunction about all of us. And we tend to want to hide our dysfunction from people and from God. It's human to do it. It stems all the way back from Genesis 3, where Adam and Eve sinned and they ate the forbidden fruit. And remember, they were naked and unashamed beforehand, but after they ate the fruit, their eyes opened. And what happened? First thing they do is to cover up. And the second thing they did is to hide from God. You see, that's where religion started. Religion wants to cover up our nakedness, to hide it from people and to hide it from God. God is not embarrassed by our nakedness. He is not embarrassed by our dysfunction that we have. He is not embarrassed by our imperfections. God is saying, I want to enter your house because I'm actually interested in the dysfunction that you have. I want to touch the dysfunction that you have. Peter, I know your mother-in-law can be a pain in the foot or something, but Peter, I want to touch your mother-in-law. I want to heal your mother-in-law. Not just physically, but I want to sort of straighten her out so they don't give you so much trouble, Peter. You know, they say behind every successful man stands a surprised mother-in-law. But that one thing we're trying to hide from Jesus is the one thing that he wants to touch in our lives. I don't know if Peter tried to hide his mother-in-law. I know some of us would. But Jesus, I want to touch your mother-in-law. And immediately the fever left her. Jesus was quite clear in another place in Scripture. He said, it's not the healthy that needs a doctor, but the sick. And he was speaking to the religious crowd. He's saying, you act as if everything is perfect. You so cover up and pretend that everything is 100%. I did not come for those who pretend they are right. I came for those who acknowledge that they are sick. I came for those who acknowledge that there's brokenness in their family, that there's some form of dysfunction, be it in our finances, be it in our marriage, be it in our relationship with our children. I came for those who know they are sick. And so just verse 15 touched me so much. He said, he touched her hand, and the fever left her, and she rose and began to serve him. You see, Jesus wants to touch and heal. The question is, are we willing to rise and serve? Jesus will touch and heal, but will I and will you rise and serve? Psychologists train us, when we did trauma counseling, that when somebody goes through a trauma, in other words, somebody's a victim of an armed robbery, or you're a victim of a tsunami that hit, or an earthquake and your house is destroyed, or something traumatic happens in your life, the psychologist teaches us that within 24 hours, we need to get that person that suffered that trauma, we need to get them serving somebody else within 24 hours. If you don't do it within 24 hours, something in the brain of the victim switches, and the person can remain a victim for the rest of their lives, mentally. And so if it's just a good tip as well, when somebody has lost a loved one, and you suffer that trauma of that loss and that grief, that person actually, you can ask that person, would you go and make coffee for the guests? It's actually important. Because it re-switches something on in the brain of saying, I am meaningful, I have a responsibility, I need to serve others. The moment we serve others, it takes the focus away from ourselves and our own loss and our own trauma, and we realize, I can do something. So Peter, they never named Peter's mother-in-law, so I think Peter's mother-in-law is everybody's mother-in-law. Is that all right? And Jesus said, I'm going to touch you, I'm going to heal you, but you need to rise up and serve. You need to rise up and serve other people. You know, when you feel depressed, how many of you sometimes feel depressed? It doesn't mean you suffer depression necessarily, but how many of us sometimes feel discouraged or depressed? Come on. We all feel down sometimes, right? And what do you do when you feel down? When you feel down and depressed, do you feel like serving others? No, you don't. You feel like lying on your bed and taking a nap, or you feel like watching TV on the couch, on the lazy boy or something. You want some comfort. Don't we all want comfort when we feel depressed, okay? That's the last thing we want to do when we feel depressed, is to serve others. But you know what? It's the first thing we need to do when we feel depressed. Because it's the first thing that will get us out of our hole of depression. And so we need to do something that seems counterintelligent to us at that point, is to get served. Jesus says, I will touch you and I will heal you, but you need to rise and you need to serve. I remember before we went become missionaries in Asia and served there for 2 years, there was a prophet that came by our church in Bloemfontein, and he spoke over me and he said, I see you walking the streets and he called some Asian cities where we went, and he says, I see you doing mission works there. And by that time, as many of you know, I had a knee condition, and I had it for about 8 years, where I couldn't stand for more than 5 or 10 minutes without experiencing excruciating pains. And I went to doctors all across the country. Nobody could do something for me. And this is what I said when the Lord said, I want you to go do mission work in Asia. I said, Lord, I will go if you touch me and you heal me. It's a nice cop-out, right? Come on, how many of you have prayed those kind of prayers? Lord, I will obey if you do something for me. We barter with God. And he's okay, because he's the best barter around. So he said to me, will you go even if I don't? Will you still go? Will you still obey? Will you still serve even if I don't touch and heal your knees? It took me a while, and eventually I said, Lord, I will go. And Katika and I went, after we got married, we went for 2 years. We did 65 flights all across Southeast Asia. I can remember carrying suitcases full of books and guitars and all of the things, literally walking in some of those streets. And I would do seminars and training conferences, standing 8 hours on my legs, And while I'm standing, I'm okay. God's grace is there, His anointing is there. And after I'm done going to the hotel room, I crawl into the room and crawl into the bed because of the pain. But tomorrow when I stand again in front of people, God sustains me for that moment. But afterwards, I'm suffering excruciating pain. Katinka knows. She asked me, don't you want to go to the swimming pools? Beautiful hotel sometimes that we stayed in. I said, no, I just want to lie here on the bed. It's so much pain. You see, sometimes God calls us to rise and serve. Sometimes He will touch and heal us so that we can rise and serve. But other times we need to rise and serve before He heals us. When we returned to South Africa, we were serving at Hatfield Christian Church as pastors. And a year into our time back here, somebody asked me, how's your knees doing, by the way? And I said to him, strange that you ask. Now that I think of it, I haven't had pain for the last year. You see, sometimes the last thing we want to do when we feel down and out is the first thing that we should do, that we need to do. And that's to rise and serve other people. And that evening, they brought to Jesus many who were oppressed by demons, and He cast out the spirits with a word. You see, even the demon spirits submits to the word of Jesus, right? And He healed some, all who were sick. Miracles multiply when my house becomes His house and His house becomes my house. Miracles multiply when I say, Jesus, enter my house, take hold of my house. Jesus said, I don't only want to visit, Adrian, I want to occupy your house. I want to come and stay in your house. When we say, Lord, my house is your house, and your church, your house, I'm taking ownership of your church. I'm involved, I'm engaged, I'm committed. Miracles will happen. Not only the one miracle for Peter's mother-in-law, but many miracles will happen. You see, a few weeks ago, we looked at Peter's boat. Can you remember that sermon about a month ago? How Jesus said, Peter, I need your boat to preach to a crowd on the shore of the Sea of Galilee. And Jesus stepped into his boat, and we had this thought that Jesus said, I want to use your boat for my business. I want to use your business and your career. I want to use that for my kingdom's sake. And so your business can become a platform from which Jesus preaches, from which Jesus reaches people. Is that all right? Okay, and so the miracle happened, not only that Jesus preached to the crowd and people got saved, but afterwards Jesus said to Peter, now Peter, take your boat, go in a little bit deeper and cast your net in once more. Peter said to Jesus, Lord, we toiled all night. I'm a trade fisherman. I know the seas, there's no fish. But at your word, just speak the word. I'm submitting myself under the sound of your word. And so Peter cast his net. He goes a bit deeper, cast his net. And the same word that created the fish in the book of Genesis 1, 2, and 3, that same word was the word that spoke to Peter to say, go deeper and cast your net. And when Jesus spoke that word, I believe the fish in the Sea of Galilee began to swim to the location that the word of Jesus directed them. I believe the word of Jesus had a pin location connected, attached to that WhatsApp message. And he said the fish must all gather in that vicinity so that Peter can haul them in. And he caught so many fish that his boat was not big enough. His business was not big enough. He had to call another boat and another business, and they were overflowing. Both boats were sinking. I think if there were 10 boats, they were also been full. Yes. So much so that they paid off all their debt and could finance the start of the ministry of Jesus. I believe God is going to do that in your business. Now, a couple of weeks ago, that's what Jesus said in chapter 5. Jesus says, Peter, I want to use your boat for my business. Now Jesus takes it a step up. He says, Peter, I'm not just satisfied with your boat. I want your home. I want your house. Let me enter your house. I know there's some things that you feel embarrassed over. I know, Peter, there's something that you say is a mess in my house. Now, just now the children, and Jesus says, I know all of that things. Jesus says, Peter, I'm not embarrassed by the things that you are embarrassed over. I want to use it. I want to touch your house. I want to touch the dysfunction in your house and heal that. And through your house, I want to touch many people. And that evening, Jesus runs a healing crusade. He runs a citywide healing crusade from Peter's house. Come on. And Peter's mother-in-law, who was sick the morning, ran the logistics for his healing crusade that evening. She served them all. Wow. Miracles happen. When my house becomes his house. And his house become my house. Miracles happen when I say, Lord, I will open my house for a city group. After our Jesus Week in October, when thousands of people are going to get saved, Lord, I will open my house, even though I might be embarrassed about my space. If you can use anything, Lord, use me and use my house. Use my place. God is saying, I'm not embarrassed about your house. I will do miracles from your house and in your house. You know what? In October, we're having planning that Jesus Week from the 20th to the 27th. And we get the Christ for All Nations team. There's going to be 30 evangelists. That's the ministry that Reinhard Bonke started. A few years ago, he passed it over to Daniel Kalenda before he passed on to be with the Lord. And 30 of their top evangelists are coming to town. And we've booked the AR Bus Stadium, which is right in between the bigger Kimberley area. And we will have buses driving from this side of town, from the churches. You can drive, there will be secure parking. But we'll have buses also from our churches going from here. You can park here at the church and ride a bus if you don't want to drive at night in that direction as well. And we need, you know how many people we need there? We need 4,000 to 5,000 people in our altar call team, our salvation team. Because the first night we're trusting God for 5,000 souls. So we need 5,000 workers. So also we need every hand to be on deck. I'm looking at each of you. Each of us can reach one. Each one would reach one. But God wants to touch us so that He can, through us, touch other people. He wants to touch your home so that through your home He can touch other people. And so I want to appeal to you, and I believe the Lord appeals to you. Open your heart, open your home, open your hands and say, Lord, I am available. Jesus is seeking open hearts this morning. He's seeking open hands and open houses. He wants to touch us so that we can become a touch. I had this thought as I prepared that Jesus wants to enter your house so that He can invade the city. Come on. Jesus wants to enter our house, our homes, so that He can invade the city through our homes. And so today, I don't know about you, but we need a touch from God so that through us, we can become a touch of God for other people. I need a touch from God so that I can become a touch of God for someone.